Hi, I'm Ken. In this video, I'll show you several different approaches to make earning long route badges more readily achievable. Many of us have an objective to complete all the route badges on Swift, but then you may begin to despair because some of those routes are very long and take an inordinate amount of time to complete. So for example, the PRL full, 178 kilometers long with over 2,600 meters of climbing. And at 2 watts per kilogram, it would take you 7.25 hours to complete. Another very difficult route badge to get is the Uber Pretzel. That route's 128 kilometers long, over 2,300 meters of climbing, and a 5.5 hour effort, again at 2 watts per kilogram. Or the Four Horsemen, 90 kilometers, more than 2,000 meters of climbing. It might take you 4.5 hours to do it. And even Ven-Top, which is only 21 kilometers, but it includes a whopping 1,531 meters of climbing, which would take you 2.5 hours. And by the way, I've got those time estimates from Swift Time Predictor. Let's have a look at that website. On the Swift Route Time Predictor website, you input your FTP, your weight, your height, and then how many watts per kilogram you'll be riding, which zone you'll be riding in. For the time estimates that I've given on the previous slide, I used an FTP of 200, a weight of 70 kilograms, and a height of 170 centimeters, and 2 watts per kilogram. And then you can look at how much time it would take to complete each route. So for example, let's have a look at the Mega Pretzel and Uber Pretzel. So for the Mega Pretzel, it estimated 4 hours and 21 minutes. And for the Uber Pretzel, it estimated 5 hours and 37 minutes. Let's jump over to London and we'll look at the PRL full. The estimate is 7 hours and 16 minutes. And then jumping over to France, we can see for Ven-Top, the estimate was 2 hours and 27 minutes. And if you change your effort or watts per kilogram, let's try 1.6 watts per kilogram. You can see now the estimate for Ven-Top went from 2 hours 27 minutes to 3 hours. Similarly for the PRL full, again for 2 watts per kilogram, 7 hours and 20 minutes. And if we reduce our effort to 1.6 watts per kilogram, why net would take you 8 hours and 29 minutes. So a very good website to predict how long it will take you to complete a route. Now there are 3 ways in which you can ride a route: in a group event, in a meetup, or in a solo ride. I want to talk about each one and what you can do to make it easier to get the long route badges. Now, obviously one way to complete a long ride is to do a group ride event. The downside here when you're badge hunting is that there are very, very few events for the long routes. You'll have trouble finding them. One place to look is on swifthacks.com. You can enter a route name and look for upcoming events for that route. But in many cases, you won't find any. You just have to keep looking, because typically events are only posted 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks in advance. The other thing is become familiar with the different clubs on Swift. Some of the clubs regularly have badge hunting events, and you're more likely to come across a long event with one of those clubs. And then the other downside, though, is that you do have to ride at that group's pace. So pick a ride that matches your category, A, B, C, D. Let's have a quick look at the swifthacks.com to see how we can find an event. So from this screen, I'll click on Events, and then click on Routes. And now I'll search for a route. Let's search for Road to Skye. We should find several events for this route. And you can see there are quite a few events coming up for that route. Now let's look for another route. There are lots of events for Road to Skye, but not so much for other routes. Let's look for the Pretzel. It's not even one of the toughest routes. Okay, so let's look for events now for the Pretzel. And here I found 2 events for the pretzel. And now let's look for the mega pretzel and why there are no events currently scheduled for the pretzel. And that's one of the challenges when you're looking to do a group event, particular long route, just because there are not that many events scheduled for them. But using Swift hacks to find an event for the route you want to do is a good place to search them out. The hack, if you could call it that, for group rides is to look for banded events. You stay with the group as long as you are pedaling. So you can decrease your power and you'll still stay with the group. And that's a big advantage. Look for clubs that have badge hunting events and that are banded. One club that I'm familiar with is Phoenix Rising, and they have a Polar Express banded ride every Saturday. And often those events are badge hunting events. And they do hold events for the really long routes during the course of the year. And that's the way that I earned many of my long route achievement badges. Now, one of the ways to get around limited events is to organize your own meetups for those long routes. And that way you can schedule them whenever you want. The challenge is to find others who are also seeking the route badge and who will join you on the meetup. And if you do organize a meetup to earn a route badge, why, take the option and make it a banded meetup ride. So the group will help one another to complete the route. That makes a huge difference. Now, what about solo rides? Well, you don't get any group support, but you can schedule them on a date and time whenever you want. You ride at your own pace and you can take your breaks. You can take them at any time. The downside is you're on your bike for a long time by yourself, and that can be a real struggle, especially without the motivation of riding with others on Swift. But I've got a hack that may make earning a route badge on a solo ride more readily achievable. The hack is to do long solo rides over several days, or at least with long breaks between when you're riding. Now, I came across this when I was coming back from an injury. I hadn't been able to ride for several weeks, and my rehab only allowed me to ride for short durations and at low power outputs. I was looking for something to motivate me to ride again on Swift, and I didn't have the Ven-Top badge. But that route would take me like 2.5 hours to complete at my restrictions, and I couldn't do that all at once. But I logged on, I rode for 45 minutes, stopped riding, left my computer on in sleep mode, and then came back the next day, woke up my computer, resumed the Swift session, and I did that for a couple of more days, and I did complete the Ven-Top route and got the route badge. Because when you're doing a solo ride on Swift, you can take breaks at any time and of any duration. And as I found out, breaks can even be many hours or even days long. You just keep the Swift session open and your ride going. Keep your computer on, but it can be left on in the sleep mode. The one caveat is that your computer has to be on the whole time Swift is running. So if you have a power failure and your computer doesn't have battery backup, you may have lost all the effort. So just keep that in mind. Hey, maybe you'll look out to see if there's any heavy storms coming, which would increase the likelihood of a power failure, and you don't do it at that time. But otherwise, hey, this is a pretty good way to go. Let me give you a real-life demo. Before I do the live demo, let me just go through the steps again. You stop pedaling, you leave the Swift ride open and Swift running. You open the Windows Start menu. So this is on a Windows computer. Click on Start and then click on Power and choose Sleep. And when you're ready to ride again, to wake up your computer, click on any key or click on your mouse, and you'll be able to keep riding on Swift to complete your route. So for this example, I'll pick the Uber Pretzel. And start the ride. So now I'll start pedaling. And I'm not going to go very far before I'll stop. And I can start here and get off my bike and go do whatever I like for as long as I like. Jump back on my bike and start pedaling again. Of course, if I was actually doing the route, I probably would have been riding for, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, and then stopped to take a break. But now that I've stopped, I can bring up my start menu, click on start, then click on power, and then click on sleep. And then when you're ready to resume your ride, you can click on your mouse or any key on the keyboard. And you'll be back in the Swift game and ready to start riding again. Now that you know about it, it seems pretty obvious, but I'd never thought of it before. But it's a good hack to complete those really long rides on your own. So a few suggestions or hacks for completing those long routes to get those achievement badges. So first off, group events that are banded. So look for a club that has badge hunting events that are banded. Next, a banded meetup. You can schedule them anytime as long as you have friends on Swift that are looking to get the same route badges and are willing to join you. And finally, maybe a quirky approach, but one that works, doing a solo ride over multiple days. I hope that helps. So that's it. Hope you found this video to be helpful. If you have, give the video a thumbs up, like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Endurance Sweat, where we train hard and have fun.